I really appreciate you tuning into my video again. I really appreciate your patience, and I look forward to explaining these numbers a little better for you so you get some clarity. Let me digress for a moment again. Uh, the gentleman over my shoulder over here essentially is saying courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway. That's what I think we all have to do. We have to, even though it's a very scary topic and we're concerned about it, we have to man up and take this thing seriously because it is literally the welfare of our children and this next generation and our grandchildren as well. So we need to become informed. Uh, I'd like to digress for a minute and talk about that Becquerel definition. It's the activity of a, a quantity of radioactive materials in which one nucleus disintegrates per second. Keep that in mind. And all of this is important that you understand. This is my opinion based on extensive research that I've done in reading and following up uh, on YouTube with some of the scientists and what they're saying. And I'd like to keep in mind, and ask the question again, who's cut the telegraph line? That's an old Western term based on Indians and bad guys that didn't want the people to be able to communicate between the towns. But I don't understand why it is that we're not able to get information about Fukushima from CNN, NBC, MSNBC, Fox. Why aren't they telling us what's really going on in Fukushima? Who's got the power to stop them from talking? Who's put the gag order here? Can you imagine the power they must have to shut down the media the way they have? Why aren't we hearing about Fukushima? We have agencies, NOAA, the EPA. We have all kinds of agencies that should be telling us on a daily basis what's going on. They're all mute. Who's put the gag in their mouth? Figure that out, please. Take the time and the effort to do your homework. Let me switch over to the whiteboard here and show you some numbers. I hope they make sense and that you can get some clarity. And once I go through the first ones, I think I'll just cut to the chase on it because it's really pretty standard form I'm using, and clearly you can go through it on your own. First off, I'm talking about identical twins for convenience, 20 kilograms, 44 pounds, 5 years old, boy, girl. To remind you, she's at a 20 times risk factor, he's at a 10 times. An adult, 160-pound male, 1 time. U.S. negotiated allowables. This was negotiated with Japan. Just after the Fukushima event, Hillary and her entourage went over there and negotiated these numbers. I'm unclear why. I'm unclear who the scientific advisors were, but I think it's very important for us to figure this out. It's our fannies that are in the fire because of these numbers. We need to determine how they came up with those numbers, what their motivation was, and how these numbers will affect us over the long term. So I'm going to use the 1,200 becquerels that were negotiated. Again, to remind you, there was no testing of the foods coming from Japan. Most of the other countries in the world have refused to buy any foods from Japan, much less up to 1,200 becquerels. So what do they know that we don't? What do the Germans know down here where they're only at 5 becquerels per kilogram of weight? That's 240 times less than what was negotiated on our behalf. Why is our water per liter at 613? Somebody needs to answer these questions and answer them intelligently, and we have a right to know. And our agencies, again, the EPA, NOAA, all these different agencies should be telling us what's really going on as opposed to all of them being totally silent. So I'm going to go through the numbers. 20 kilograms of weight, 1,200 becquerels of food, 1,226 of water, that's 2 liters at 613, equals 2,426 becquerels per day. The risk factor of the girl is times 20, which is your 48,520 becquerels per day. The retention rate, many say it's 50%. I'm just using a 33% retention because I'm trying to be a little conservative, equals 16,011 becquerels per day, divided by the 20 kilograms of weight equals 800.55. You multiply that by the average number of days in a month, which is 30.41. You come up with 24,344.72 becquerels per month. This number here represents a threshold of 50, and you divide this number by 50 and you'll get this number, which means this is the number essentially of lethal doses at this 50 level, which most scientists agree is an area where there's significant internal damage to all the organs and you're in real serious trouble. And I'd remind you that they're literally flying hundreds of thousands of children right now out of the Chernobyl and Belarus area in Europe, some 30 years after an event that contaminated in 12 days 40% of the landmass in Europe. They're shipping those kids out because they're too contaminated consuming food at too high a becquerels. So do your homework, be mindful, be knowledgeable about what's going on. It's very important. Again, I'm going to just go through the boy here, and then I'm going to just cut to the chase on these other two because it's self-explanatory. You'll be able to, freeze it and understand everything. The boy is 10 times, 24, 26, 33% retention, 805 becquerels per day, divided by the kilograms, 400. Multiplied by the number of days is 1,200, 160 or 172.21 becquerels per month, and that's 243 times a lethal dose in essence. So please do your homework. I'm not going to go through the next two in the same detail. Understand that Germany's at 5 becquerels per kilogram of weight. When you do the multiplication, you'll come up with 150 becquerels per month. On the young boy at 10 times, you come up with 75.26 becquerels per month. This is a little over 3 lethal doses a month. This is 1.5. You can see the math. Again, my level at 1/10 of a becquerel, self-explanatory. The survivable down here ends up being 1.5 becquerel per month. It's important for you to keep in mind that the fetus literally is 1,000 times more impacted by this radiation inside the female womb. We need to keep that in mind. To remind you again, girls are at 20 times the risk as an adult, 160-pound man, and boys are at 10 times the risk. We should be setting these benchmarks for the children who are at greatest risk and the fetus, not on a 160-pound adult like the nuclear industry is doing. It's only very clear what their agenda is. They're buying these media, they're buying these governments, they're controlling the output of information. They put a gag order on everyone like Japan did. Japan put a 10-year prison sentence if you talk about Fukushima and health and radiation. You get put in prison. If you're a person in the media or a professor or a doctor, you can't do it. They put the lid on things. Well, the nuclear industry's done the same thing. So please do your homework. I appreciate if you follow up and read my sources, my scientific sources, so that you have a good list that you can contact and follow up on and do your own research with. And please answer this question if you have the time and the contacts. Who cut the telegraph line? Why are we in the predicament we're in, and why is nobody talking? It's the worst event in the history of mankind. We need to be discussing solutions. We need the best minds on the planet with plenty of resources solving this problem because it affects all of us. Every 42 days, that radiation is circling the Earth. We need to be mindful of that. It's been out there for over 2,000 days. Do your homework, be informed. Thank you for your time and consideration.